My name's Thomas. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everyone. My sobriety date is January 25th, 1981. Potomac Oaks is my home group. It's actually meeting in 10 minutes. I have a sponsor, and I am privileged to sponsor a whole bunch of guys that are all at my home group. It's really nice to be here tonight. Raven, welcome. This is where the hope is. Whatever it is that got you here tonight, I mean, I didn't get to Alcoholics Anonymous because I ate too many Reese's peanut butter cups, okay? I mean, I love to drink. So whatever it is that got you here, usually pain or trouble, it never has to get that bad ever again. This is where the hope is. And, you know, I get asked often, you know, and if you're new, why would you, drive 2 hours and 45 minutes in traffic on a Friday night to go to a meeting? You've been doing it for 35 years. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is because I need you way more than you need me. You know, I could decide to drink tonight, and you know what? This meeting will still be here next Friday. You know, I need to repay the debt for all those old-timers that took time out of their day to help me when I was a 19 and 20-year-old snot-nosed kid that thought I knew everything, and they were very patient with me. You know, and they carried a message of hope that told me if I do certain things, then I can have a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I have to repay that. But mostly I do this because, you know, I still have alcoholism, and it crops up at the most inopportune times. You know, I remember, this is a few years back now, and I've got so many stories of my alcoholism, which comes out even though I'm not drinking. So several years ago, I'm in church with my two small boys. At the time, they were maybe 6 and 4 years old. Okay, so they are acting like 6-year-olds and 4-year-olds in church. You know, they're very bored, so I stand in between them because I try to, you know, cause some interference. And they're behind me poking each other, and they're giggling, and they're laughing. And there's a guy who's probably 80 years old. He was in the pew right in front of me. You know, and he keeps doing this. Now, I start boiling because this guy is telling me I'm a terrible father. In my head, that's what I'm thinking, right? And it's I'm getting pissed. And I'm if this guy turns around one more time, I'm going to knock him out after church. Now, I'm in church having thoughts like this because I'm self-centered. That's my problem as an alcoholic. I only think about me, and I don't care about anyone else. And so, sure enough, 2 minutes later, they're giggling, and this guy turns around, and I'm that's it. After church, I'm going to go out to my car, I'm going to go to the glove box, I'm going to get my 9mm, and I'm going to whack this guy. In church, okay? Now, mind you, I've never owned a 9mm, never even touched a 9mm, but in my alcoholic mind, I'm having this fantasy I'm going to whack this guy because, you know, my mother's from Sicily, so that makes me like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. Right? The book talks about how I have these delusions of grandeur, right, and how they just run over my head. Now, I was 20-something years sober having these thoughts, okay? That's what I mean. It doesn't matter how long I'm sober, I am still prone to thinking that this guy is having an affront against my fatherhood. Now, very much to my surprise, Mass is over, and I'm still carrying on in my head. This guy turns around, and I'm right about to let him have it, and he says to me, you know, I just wanted to tell you, you've got the two most beautiful boys. Oh, it's not what I was expecting him to say. So now I got to call my sponsor and read out that I'm having these insane thoughts in church about this old guy that's harmless, right? And he says, you know what your problem is? You think because you're so self-centered that everyone else thinks like you. They don't think like you. You know, that's why you need a spiritual solution. So, look, I had my first drink when I was 12. I come from a Sicilian, Irish, Catholic family. My dad was Irish all the way back from Ireland, and my mother was Sicilian, as I said. And my dad was an active alcoholic for the first 10 years of my life, and I've always said I should have just been born in a meeting because it was just destined to happen eventually. The first 10 years of my life were pretty uncomfortable, okay? I was one of 8 kids. But for whatever reason, I was my dad's scapegoat. You know, I got all the abuse, all the physical abuse, the mental abuse, the verbal abuse. He just always picked on me. Now, I've stopped trying to figure out why that was, right? He was an alcoholic, and he took it out on me, whatever. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. It just created a framework. I drank because, it says in the book, we drink because we like the effect produced by alcohol. I don't like the way I feel, and that whole upbringing made me feel less than, like I wasn't ever going to be good enough. I was never going to amount to anything, that I feel less than. Now, put a couple drinks in me, and I feel great. So, the first chance I had to drink, I was 12 years old. And a friend of mine from 8th grade had older brothers, and he got us 2 6-packs of beer. Now, when I was 12 years old, I was about 5 foot nothing. I weighed less than 100 pounds. And I shotgunned 6 beers in like 5 minutes. 6 beers in 5 minutes to a 100-pound weakling that's never had alcohol before has a really profound effect on the human body. And I just remember for like the next hour, I was like walking around and everything was great. I wasn't worried about my dad hitting me. I wasn't worried about anything. Everything was awesome. Of course, now a couple hours later, those same 6 beers to somebody that never drank have a completely different effect. I found myself in the Clancy's were our neighbors, in the Clancy's bushes, covered in puke, and I woke up that way. It was a blackout. I didn't know it was a blackout. I just know that's where I woke up. I don't know how I got there. And I remember telling my brothers, the next day that I don't know what happened last night. I had a couple of beers and I wound up in the Clancy's bushes. Now, my older brothers, they were not very sympathetic. Don't worry about it. We've all wound up in the Clancy's bushes. Not a big deal. It's like, okay, I have a pass to drink. But I remember that, I felt great for about an hour. But then I felt like death for about 2 days. And I just did the math. It's like, great for an hour, terrible for 2 days. Okay, don't drink. It's just not worth it. But it doesn't take very long for an alcoholic of my type to, not feel good again. And the only thing that made me feel better was drinking. Now, I always talk about drinking because this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I believe in our traditions. Okay, it's a singleness of purpose. Now, if you did drugs, you know what? I did every drug under the sun, too. I just don't talk about that in the AA meeting, okay? But if it helps you, I did them all, okay? So, fast forward, maybe another year or so, and another one of our neighbors, another Italian family. I don't know if you've ever been to Italian homes, but they usually have a liquor cabinet, and then on top of the liquor cabinet they got all that colorful stuff, like the cream de menthe, it's green, and the big tall yellow bottle and the red one, and it's like all liqueurs, all very sweet and all very nasty. So one night, because we didn't have friends that would buy us alcohol, I was like, well, we're just going to drink some of that stuff. I found out 2 things that night. If you drink enough of that nasty stuff, you will get drunk. And the other thing I found is if you drink enough of that stuff, you will puke rainbows. It is just completely disgusting. So now I'm 2 for 2. I drink, I puke, it's like, forget it. But again, I don't like the way I feel. I want to feel different. I always want to feel different. So it's only a matter of time before I start drinking again. Now I'm in high school, and I'm drinking. Now, my dad, when I was 10 years old, decided to quit drinking and joined Alcoholics Anonymous. Talk about putting a damper on my drinking. Now my dad's sober, and I'm going off the radar screen, off the charts drinking. Very profound thing happened when my dad stopped drinking. He didn't want to hit me anymore, which was kind of cool. But all he ever wanted to do was talk to me. And quite frankly, I wasn't sure which was worse. Okay? Because when he'd hit me, boom, 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 done. When he'd talk to me, it would be like an hour. Well, son, you should think about turning your life over to the care of God. I'm 13 going, what? What are you talking about? I just want to let me go. I just want to drink. And I can look back on it today and understand. My dad was just trying to plant a seed to help me. But when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, it's this was not fertile soil. There was nothing getting planted there. And he kept trying. And I kept drinking. And he would have these chats with me, and I'd say, okay, can I go now? And then I would go get drunk. And I started getting in trouble in school. I I got suspended 3 different times from my high school, all drinking related. And I always said, you know what, wrong place, wrong time. It wasn't my fault. Classic excuse of many alcoholics. I sponsor a lot. I know it's like a classic. No, it wasn't my fault, really. So one night he had this conversation and says, look, we've been having all these conversations and you just keep drinking. So your mother and I have decided we're going to get you, we got you a plane ticket and you're going to go to Minnesota tomorrow morning. I was like, Minnesota? What the hell's in Minnesota? He said, treatment center. I said, treatment for what? I don't have anything. We think you might have alcoholism like me. Now, I hated my dad. I was like, look, I am nothing like you. He goes, well, that might be what you think in your head, but you know what? You're drinking a lot and we want to try to help you. So I went out that night like any good alcoholic, and I got as hammered as I could get. And I did everything else under the sun that I had my hands on. And I stumbled into my house about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was shaking me. I passed out on the bed, fully clothed, at 6 o'clock, saying, come on, we got to go to the airport. So I threw some clothes into the bag, and we drove to the airport. We didn't say a word to each other the whole time. And we got to the airport, and I had my first spiritual experience and my first resentment. We were walking through the metal detector. Now, this was like way before 9/11. This was in 1979. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on my way to treatment. I'm going to get arrested, because I felt in my pocket I had this metal pipe that I was using the night before. I was like, great, I'm going to go through the metal detector and the police are going to get me and it'll be all over. So I just, quick thinking like we do, and I was like, Dad, here, take this. I figured, he knew what's he going to do at this point, right? He took the pipe, walked through the metal detector, and nothing happened. Resentment, immediately. I could have used that thing in treatment. I could have scraped something out of it, take the edge off. But God had a different idea. It's like, maybe you're going to try to get some help here. And so I get to treatment, and another funny thing happened to me at treatment. This kid, he looked like he was like 10 years old, literally. He's little, tiny kid, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and he looks at me, and he says, first time? I'm like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 12. My name's Richard. He goes, you stick with me. This is my third time. I was like, you're 12. He goes, yep. My dad's like your dad. He's in AA. He thinks I need help. I thought, okay, maybe I'm not too young. This dude's 12. So I took his advice. I didn't know any better, and I stuck with him. Because when you get to treatment, what they do, I don't know about here, but like in Minnesota, they take all your clothes, and they put you in this like ratty, nasty nightgown. And they're like, I was like, what are you doing? It's like, well, when you're ready, maybe you'll get your clothes back. He's like, oh, great. So I'm walking around in this thing, and we go into the group session the next day, and Richard says, my name's Richard, and I'm an alcoholic. That afternoon, Richard had his clothes. I was like, oh, okay, I get that. So the next day, I go into group session, I said, my name's Thomas, and I'm an alcoholic. I got my clothes back. I was like, sweet, first step, done. Right? Well, what they don't tell you is when you act goofy, like we tend to do when we're new, they take your clothes back and they put you back in that ratty nightgown. Well, I was in and out of that nightgown like 20 times in 7 weeks, right? Because I thought I was smarter than the counselors, and I was going to fool them, and I was going to trick them, and I don't really have alcoholism. I'm too young. You don't quit drinking when you're 18 years old. You start. And I had my 19th birthday in a treatment center. Now, there's a lot of young people in this meeting, and I'm sure to a lot of you, I look kind of old. Let me tell you, in 1979, there was a lot of people, it's like, those were some old-ass dudes, okay? Those guys got winded playing chess, okay? They were old. And it's like, I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous thinking, there is no way I'm going to get this. Because these guys are so old. They reminded me of my dad, and I hated my dad, so I knew I wasn't going to get it. But I thought, what, my dad spent all this money to send me to treatment. I'm going to at least try to, get this thing. So I am going to meetings every day. And in the first year and a half I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was in a meeting every single day. Sometimes I'd go to 2, and sometimes I'd go to 3. Like on weekends, I'd go to the noon meeting, then I'd go to the 8 o'clock meeting, and sometimes they'd have midnight meetings, I'd go to those. Now, I would go to these meetings every single day. And in the first year and a half I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, I went out and got drunk 3 different times. I was sober 3 months, I got drunk. I was sober a little over a year, I got drunk. I was sober another 3 months, I got drunk. And I don't tell you that to say, if you go to meetings, you're going to get drunk. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. Meetings are an absolutely critical part of the program that I work in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to be in a meeting where people know who I am, where I'm accountable. So when I start acting a little bit crooked, like that day in the church with the 9mm, okay, people call me out on it, right? But meetings unto themselves are not going to keep me sober. What keeps me sober is working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous under the direction of a sponsor. And I stress under the direction of a sponsor because I can look at those and think, this is what I need to do. And very often, my sponsor has a different take on what that looks like. So after the third time I went out, I went very sheepishly back into the meeting because I've been in these meetings every day. So people know me and they're like, yeah, this guy's back again. And I thought, you know what, I got to do something different. You know, when I was a kid, I was a ball player. 3 strikes, you're out. So I go up to this guy, Dave, who was about 30 years old, and he was sober for 10 years. So he was also sober very young. So I was like, okay, I'm not too young for this guy. He gets it. I said, Dave, look, I need help, man. I can't stop drinking. I keep going back out. I don't know why. And it's like, I need help. I was wondering, you know, if you would be my sponsor. Now, Dave, you know, he was maybe 5'6", weighed about 200 pounds, and he had a hand like a catcher's mitt. And he took his finger and he poked me in the chest. He's like, so, you want me to be your sponsor? I'm very sensitive, you know. I'm an alcoholic. I'm very sensitive. Don't yell at me, right? I was like, well, yeah, I just asked you if you'd be my sponsor. Was that like a trick question? He goes, I was like, just tell me what I need to do. You know, I'll do anything. I want to stop drinking, finally. He said, fine. And he yelled like that, just straight up. He goes, 2 things. I said, all right, what's the first thing? He goes, shut up. He goes, you've been coming around here for a year and a half talking like you know what's going on. You're coming in meetings. You don't help anybody. You don't lift up chairs. You don't do anything. Okay. What's the second thing? Just shut up! Said, you need to learn how to listen. He goes, there's actually a message that takes place in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you, stop yapping and, listen to people that came here before you, maybe you will get a message. And maybe you will take that message and impart it into your own life. And so you're not so miserable. You'll be able to live in your own skin without being crazy. You'll be able to live in your skin not feeling so bad that the only thing that makes you feel better is a drink. So Dave became my sponsor. And he was my sponsor for a couple of years, and then I went off to school. And when I went to school, he says, look, you're kind of newly sober. You should... maybe think about getting a local sponsor. So I did. I went to school in Erie, Pennsylvania. I don't know if I said this one. I grew up in upstate New York. And, I got to tell you about my brothers, too. My brothers were brutal. It wasn't just my dad. My brothers were just always, pounding on me, and I was, very sensitive, and I was crying all the time. I was like, suck it up, Barbie. Just deal with it. Boys don't cry. Just get over it. Very, very mean older brothers. And, I instigated too. I was the guy that would always poke him at the wrong time and then get my butt kicked, and then that's just it was a lot of fun. Anyway, so I go off to college and I meet this guy, Six Pack Charlie. He was an old crotchety guy. He was great though. He was just if you looked at him, you'd be scared of him. And he was sober for 20 years in AA, and even though he looked really scary, he was one of the most gentle souls you've ever met. And he sponsored me for the next probably 14 plus years until he passed away. And he really helped me when I was in school, kept me going to meetings, always picked me up, was always available. And that's important. Because when you're newly sober, you got to have somebody that you can talk to, to bounce stuff off of. And he was very, very helpful. And school was, school was great. I would have never gone to school if it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't have. I would have just been content. And I'm not saying, like, if you don't go to school, it's not a big deal, but it's like, I was told, like, whatever I want to do, if I stay sober, I can do whatever I want to do. You know? I can have a life beyond my wildest dreams. So I did go back to school. They actually gave me a golf scholarship to go to school. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So I made it through school, and out of school, I got a great job with Hyatt Hotels. And I was managing Hyatt Hotels, and they were sending me, I started in Savannah, Georgia. They moved me to Atlanta, Georgia. I met a girl. We moved to Hawaii, got married in Hawaii. And just before I went to Hawaii, I went home to see my dad. You know, I was probably about 13, 12 years sober at that time. And I have to backtrack a minute because part of working the steps, there's step 9, it's about making amends. And I refused to make amends to my dad for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years. It talks about it in the book. I was incapable, or not incapable, I was unwilling to forgive him. Now, I'm going to him to seek forgiveness, but I am unwilling to forgive him. And it wasn't because my sponsor wasn't reminding me on a regular basis, you know, you need to go make amends to your dad. It's like, that's the biggest one. What are you holding out for? You need to do that. And it's like, yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that. And I just never got to it. And then one night, you know, I was in the kitchen feeling very tight because he was in the house. And I just said to my mother, I was like, look, you know, I don't know what it is, but I just can't even be in the same room with him. I just get so tight, you know. And she goes, well, look, why don't you just talk to him? And for whatever reason, that night it clicked. My sponsor had been telling me for probably 3-4 years, and I just refused to do it. But that night when my mom said that, I was in enough pain, I was like, look, I don't want to feel that anymore. So I made amends to my dad. You know, it's the only time in my dad's life I ever saw him in tears. You know, it was very, very powerful. And, you know, that's another reason why I will drive 2 hours and 45 minutes for a meeting. Because Alcoholics Anonymous got me right with my dad. So when I went to go see him before I moved to Hawaii, we had a great visit. You know, and he took me to the airport, and I got on my plane to go to Hawaii, and I hugged him, and I told him I loved him. And a week later, I got a call from my brother that my dad was dead. He had a massive heart attack. So for the past 27 years, every time I think about my dad, I don't think about, I wish I would have. Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? I think about my dad, and I have perfect peace. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why whenever somebody asks me to do it, I just say yes. Because I owe that. I owe 27 years of peace to Alcoholics Anonymous. I would have never done it if it hadn't been for the steps. So, I'm in Hawaii, I get married, my father passes away. About a year later, my wife's father passes away. So we're just like, you know what? Death is hard enough when you're next door, but when you're 10,000 miles away, it's just really complicated. And so we decided to move back. And so they moved me back to Chicago. And I was very busy. I was very busy with my life. There was meetings in my hotel of Alcoholics Anonymous every night of the week. And I was at meetings often. And then we had a child. And then we had another child. And taking care of my children, taking care of my wife, taking care of my job became more important than taking care of my illness. So, I mean, I would call home sometimes, you know, and I'd say, how's it going, honey? She was not good. I was like, what's up? So as your son just, you know, knocked over the lamp and broke it. I was like, well, it'll be okay. No, I'm going to throw him out the window. I was like, well, we live on the 21st floor. Don't throw him out the window, all right? I'll be home in a minute, you know? And I started going home. I stopped going to those meetings. Like, you know what? My kids are not going to have what I had. I am not going to beat my kids. I'm going to be present. I'm going to bathe them. I'm going to put them to sleep. I'm going to be a good, loving father. You know, and I'm like Jim in the Big Book. All went fine for a while, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Everything happened just like that, only I didn't get drunk many times in succession. I turned into a raving lunatic. Because at that time, my sponsor, Six Pack Charlie, passed away. I didn't get another sponsor. I was like 16 years sober at the time. Now, I should know better. It's like, I need a sponsor. I don't care how long I'm sober. I need somebody that I bounce stuff off of. I'm not better than that, okay? I didn't get another sponsor. I started going to less meetings. I started worrying about my job and my big car and my big house and all this stuff and not taking care of the thing that made all those things available to me in my life. And when I put anything ahead of Alcoholics Anonymous, I lose it. Right? So I'm acting like a maniac for a year and a half, and finally my wife says, look, I didn't sign up for this detail. You're a maniac, you know, I want a divorce. So, just shy of being 18 years sober, I got divorced. And I remember right around that time we had a huge function at our hotel. All of the Hyatt hotels, top brass, were in a hotel for this big meeting. We'd been planning it for 6 months around the clock, and the meeting went off without a hitch. Lots of pats on the back. Everything was great. Great job. Great job. One of the vice presidents says, hey, we're going to have a party in the restaurant and celebrate. And I remember sitting in the restaurant before dinner, and on the bar there was like about 20 bottles of wine, all like $100 bottles of wine. There was like, and I looked over at those bottles. And for the first time in probably 16 years, you know, the first years was, you know, they were kind of crazy. I thought about drinking from time to time. But after I started working the steps, the obsession for drinking was gone. I never even thought about it. So that night, just shy of 18 years sober, when that thought hit me, that wine looked good, I mean, you know, my wife was gone. She was in Carolina. I was in Chicago. I was feeling sorry for myself. I just thought, that's a good idea. And all I can tell you that night is I had 3 moments of grace. The first moment of grace was when I had that thought, because I hadn't thought about drinking for so long, something came into my head. It's like, no, you're not going to drink. You know, you're going to go find a meeting. So I looked at the vice president and I said, look, I can't be here. I got to go. He says, look, go do what you got to do. So I went to this meeting, which coincidentally was about a half a mile from this big house I was telling you about, that I had never been to, okay? Because I was too busy taking care of my house and my kids. Wasn't taking care of my illness. So I go to this meeting and I have my second moment of grace. I raised my hand. Like the beginning of this meeting. Is there anyone at this meeting for the first time? I raised my hand. I said, my name's Thomas. I'm an alcoholic. I'm almost 18 years sober. And 30 minutes ago, I almost took a drink. Now that's grace. There is no way, I'm an egomaniac. I can't muster that kind of ego deflation and say, I was 18 years sober, I want to drink. I want to say, well, you know, on page 63, when they're talking about the third step, that's what I want to say, but I didn't do that. I was like, I'm hurting, I'm broken. That's just grace. Because I can't do that left to my own devices. And the third moment of grace happened when the next guy raised his hand. This guy has since told me many times the story. He wasn't going to go to the meeting that night. He was an attorney in downtown Chicago. The meeting was in the suburbs, about an hour and a half away. And even though it was one of his 2 home groups, he's like, you know what? I'm not going to make it in time. Even if I make it, there's going to be like, the room's probably 4 times the size of this and packed. And there's like 1 piano bench all the way in the corner. And I'm up here and it's like, you know what? I'm just not going to go. But something told him to go to that meeting. So he went to the meeting and he listened to me babble about how this illness is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and how 30 minutes ago I almost took a drink. And he had heard about enough of me, and he raised his hand, and they called on him. And all I can tell you is he spoke words. I felt like I was in the ring with Mike Tyson when he was good. Okay, it was just like he said one thing, pow, said another one, pow, another one, pow. I was like getting knocked out, senseless. He's like, you know, yeah, this thing is really cunning, baffling, and powerful. You know, when you don't have a sponsor and you're not going to meeting and you're not working any steps and you're not helping anybody, it's really cunning, baffling, and powerful then. You know, now if you're doing this thing, it's not that cunning, baffling, and powerful because you're busy. But you're not busy. You've been very complacent. And I was like, wow, man, this guy's amazing. So I went up to him after the meeting. I said, wow, I really appreciated your comment. You know, I kind of need a sponsor. And he looked at me and said, she had no kid. So, Tim has been my sponsor now for like the last 18 years. And, it's just grace. I mean, they talk about seconds and inches. I was seconds and inches from, destroying my life. But I was open to that moment of grace, and I said, no, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to go to a meeting. And if I hadn't, you'd have another speaker tonight. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet thousands and thousands of people that I know and I have relationships with now. Because of one moment of grace. So, if you're out there tonight and you're thinking you don't know if you're going to make it or you're not going to, I'm telling you. And maybe it's not my talk. Maybe it has nothing to do with my talk. Maybe it's just the fact that you came here tonight is going to be the one moment that changed your life. But I'm telling you, it changed my life. That one moment, that one guy spoke words that I will never forget. And now, 18 years later, I'm 35 years sober, and I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And that night, I was just trying to save my ass. I didn't know it was going to turn out like this. I just knew that drinking was not the answer. So they say don't give up, seconds before the miracle. There was a miracle that happened that night. And it's another reason why I will make a drive in traffic. And let me tell you, I hate traffic. I freaking hate traffic. And I was in 2 hours and 45 minutes of it. And you know what? A lot of praying for the other people on the road. Because I don't know about you, but generally when I'm driving, I am the only person on the road going the correct speed. Okay? If you're going slower than me, you're an idiot and you need to get off the road. And if you're going faster than me, then you're crazy and I hope you get a ticket so I don't get one. Right? Because I'm still self-absorbed. It's all about me. It's like I want to be Jim Carrey in that movie where I can just park all the cars and go. Right? It doesn't work like that. And so, look, I'll never forget, a couple years after I had met Tim's my sponsor, he's in Chicago, he had a chance to go to Rome to meet the Pope at the time. It was Pope John Paul II, and he couldn't go. And he told the guy that was running the trip, maybe you should take Thomas. He's really, he's on fire again, and maybe this is going to be a thing that's going to help him grow spiritually. Because at the end of the day, that's what this program is. I have to continue to grow spiritually. So, I remember hemming and hawing about it for a little bit because I didn't have any money. I almost went bankrupt when I got divorced, and it was like, I don't know. And I was like, are you kidding me? You got a chance to meet the Pope, man. Just charge it. It's like, easy for you to say. You're loaded, Anyways, I go on the trip. So I tell Tim, I say, hey, Tim, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. Is there anything that I can, bring you back from Rome since you're not going, just to say thank you? This is like a great opportunity. He goes, no, I don't want anything. He goes, but before you go in to meet the Pope, I just want you to think for one moment about that moment of grace and how you decided not to drink that night and how your life has turned out as a result of that one moment that you said, no, I'm going to go to a meeting. So I remember being in the Vatican in Rome, very powerful thing, and I'm sitting there waiting for the Pope, and I start thinking about this grace, and I start sobbing. And then the Pope comes in. Now, of course, I was very surprised when he looked down at me. He says, hey, suck it up, Barbie. He didn't really say that. I'm just kidding. He did not say that. I'm probably going to go to hell now. I'm just kidding. Okay? He didn't say that. But it was very powerful. And look, you know what? This is not like a Catholic thing. This is not, okay? It's not about that. Maybe meeting the Pope means absolutely nothing to you. But in my spiritual walk in Alcoholics Anonymous, that was a big deal to me. Right? And then I left, and I just, my job is to keep doing this. I know what it's like to be in Alcoholics Anonymous and stop doing Alcoholics Anonymous, and how that looks. And now I know I have two choices. It's like one of the greatest powers that Alcoholics Anonymous gives me. I have the power to choose. When I'm drinking, I've got no power. I have lost the power of choice. That's what the book says. If I'm not drinking, I can choose. I can choose to go to the meeting, not go to the meeting. I can choose to pick up the phone when my guy calls me or not. Okay? Sometimes that's the way that grace comes in, by what I do. Deciding to go to the meeting and maybe talking to the newcomer, or deciding to pick up the phone even though the guy that I'm sponsoring hasn't listened to my direction for like the last 20 times I told him to do this thing. I was like, did you get to that thing yet? Well, you know when they look at the ground, the answer is no. Okay? You know when there's a pause on the phone, the answer is no. Because if they did it, they're like, yes, Spons did it. It's all done. Tip-top shape. But when there's a pause, it's like, all right, tell me when you did it. Thanks. Okay? So it's like, one of my guys called me the other day. He says, I was thinking about calling you. It's like, really? My phone was thinking about ringing. It's funny. When you think about it, it doesn't happen. When you take the action, that's what works. And, the same guy, like a week later, it's like, I've been trying to get a hold of you all week. Really? You've been trying to? I bet you if I had $1 million, you wouldn't try to get a hold of me. You would get a hold of me, period. Okay? But like what we're offering here is like infinitely better than that, but I don't always view it that way. So, look, I have a little over 15 minutes, and I just want to talk about the steps, because the steps are the program, and what they mean to me. Okay? So, when I do step 1, I thought I had step 1. Okay? I had 3 strikes, I'm out. I'm powerless over alcohol. And my sponsor says, no, you have half of step 1. In step 1, there's a dash. Okay? Admitting we were powerless over alcohol, dash. Okay? In the English language, when there's a dash, that means it's the end of a thought. Now there's a new thought. What's the new thought? Our lives have become unmanageable. So that means alcohol is not in the equation, but my life is still unmanageable. What does that mean? It means take away alcohol, and I am wound so tight that everything pisses me off. And I don't care what it is. It could be traffic. It could be the lady in the Giant that's got 18 items and the 15 or less. And I'm counting going, out of my way, right? I mean, I have no patience. I'm the guy that looks at the microwave thinking, I don't have all minute, right? It's like I want stuff now. I don't want to wait a minute. Okay? So my sponsor is like, this isn't in the book. He says, look, I want you to write down every time in the course of a day you feel like dropping an F-bomb, which is like 1 million, because people piss me off. It's like, just jot it down. So when I gave him this list, was like the Dead Sea Scrolls. He's like, okay, this is the unmanageability they're talking about. They're not talking about you don't have any money in your bank or that you wreck cars or you lose jobs. That's drinking, okay? The unmanageability they're talking about is like when you take away alcohol, how you feel. Now, once I looked at that list, now I start to understand I need step 2. I need something that can help me solve my problem. Now, in the book it says lack of power is my dilemma. When I was new, if you would have told me, pick up anything 1 to 100 what your problem is or what your dilemma, lack of power would not have made the top 100, okay? I didn't see that. But after I look at the list and see how crazy I am, I can understand. It's like, I don't have the power to be any different. That's just the way I'm wired. I need something that's going to help me. And the book is very interesting. It says the main object of the book is to help me find the power. Now, I don't know about you. That sounds kind of important to me, right? There's a lot of good stuff in the big book. But if that's the main object, maybe I should pay attention to that. So when I do the 3rd step, I'm ready now because I can see I need help. I need a higher power. And the beautiful thing about AA is it doesn't matter what your higher power looks like. I mean, I've sponsored a lot of guys over a year, and it doesn't matter that I'm born one way and they're, it could be God, could be Abraham, Moses, Buddha, the light bulb, or whatever, okay? What I have found is all those different higher powers, they all seem to send their drunks to Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? You can pick whatever one you want as long as it's bigger than you. And it's not just like I'm surrendering. It's like I'm turning my will over to the care of God. Something has watched out for me. Something has kept me sober for a little while that, I'm in His care. It's like, that is not something that I grew up with, something that I was afraid of. It's like, if that was the God of my understanding, I would not be here tonight, because that was very vengeful, and it's like, He's just up there with a lightning bolt waiting to, shit, Thomas, I'd be like a pile of dust right there, okay? Glad I got rid of that guy. He was a maniac. No. It's like, I'll say, my recommendation and what worked for me was find somebody or something that's attractive to you, that you want to seek. Because I have to seek. That's my job. And it's not like God is playing hide and seek with me. It's like I'm looking, I'm praying, I'm trying to, He's like, oh, here comes Thomas, move away. It's not like that. He wants me to find Him, but I have to take that action. Right? When the book says we must be rid of selfishness or it kills us, And the next line says, God makes that possible. It says it's the root of my problems. Now, I would have never known that because you know why? I never look at the root of anything. Everything's superficial. So when I see somebody that looks like he's doing okay, it's like, yeah, he looks like he's doing okay because I'm looking on the surface. And that was my problem. I always compared my insides with your outsides. You guys look great. Inside, I was a maniac, right? I never looked at the core of anything. It's like when I was a kid, we had a huge yard, and it was covered in dandelions, okay? And like, I was the guy that always had to, hey, go pick the dandelions. And there's like a million of them. Well, if you ever had to pick dandelions, you know the deal. You got to get that tool with like the V at the bottom. You got to get all the way down to the root and pop it, right? Now, that's the root. I'll do like the first 10, then I get tired of it. Then I'll get the lawnmower. No more green flowers. Done. Sometimes that's the way I treat my alcoholism. I just want to get things good on the surface. But I don't grow spiritually, and then I wonder why I still feel miserable. So I have to keep doing that. And that's something that, the third step prayer is something I pray every day. Right? Do 4, do 5, searching and fearless. There's no way I'm going to be searching and fearless. There's no way I'm going to admit this stuff to anybody. There's no way I'm going to write this down because I'm terrified to look at it, because I feel less than, I feel dirty, I feel evil, I feel all this stuff. And if I don't have a loving, caring higher power, I don't have the courage to write it down. But then I write it down. And then I tell somebody. Everything. I remember my sponsor says, whatever the worst thing is on your list, I don't know, you kissed your cousin, you did whatever it is, just tell me the worst thing first. So I'm like reading, and I'm kind of peeking at him, thinking he's going to go, what the? Okay? He's like unfazed. And I realized, wow, that wasn't that bad after all, right? And I get rid of this stuff. You know, and how it works, it says in the first paragraph, the word honest shows up 3 times. So maybe that's important. Maybe I need to be honest about everything. And if I'm doing that, then I have a chance. And I love the directions in the book. As soon as I'm done with 5, I have to take an hour. And my sponsor's like, don't shortchange yourself. It doesn't say 37 minutes. It doesn't say 52 minutes. It says, we're quiet for an hour. Right? And we look at everything we just did. And we decide, are we ready now? Are we ready to be done with that stuff? And I felt so, relieved. I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm ready. So then I start working on these, I say the 7-step prayer when I'm done. And that's like lifelong. I have these character defects that keep coming up. Like the day in the church. Right? I have 100 stories like that where I'm acting like a maniac. Stone cold sober. Right? And something my sponsor just told me the other day is very interesting. We have lots of defects of character, and some of them get less and less, but some of them still plague you. And he says to me the other day, you can act out on 5% of your defects and still get 100% of the consequence. Ouch. That one hurt. Because, I think I can do this thing or that thing and get away with it. Like I'm using a credit card. Like, nobody needs to know about this. And it's like, hey, just put it on my card. Hey, no one needs to know. You know what? At the end of the month, I get the bill. And it's like, what the hell happened? When I act out on my character defects like that, that's what it's like. I feel miserable. And eventually, if I don't address that, I feel miserable enough that a drink starts to look attractive again. Then I get to step 8. And, step 8 seems simple. It's like, okay, yeah, I made a list. Okay, yeah, well, I already got the list. I did my 4 steps. So I got the list done. No. If you read the 12 and 12, it talks about in there, I need to extricate, which I didn't know that meant. My sponsor said, look it up. It means release from entanglement. So it's like I got all this junk down there that makes me act bad. I have to look at that stuff and figure out, do I want to get better than that? Why is that important? Because like in that paragraph it says, since defective relations with others is always the cause of my woes. It means I don't know how to relate to anybody. People piss me off because I've learned there's 2 kinds of people in the world. Me and everyone else. Right? I know. Self-centered. Right? And when I look at you like you're not serving me this way or that way, it's like I am always going to be miserable. And if I'm miserable, drinking looks attractive. I don't want drinking to be attractive. So I have to look at this stuff. And then I make amends. I talked about my amends with my dad. Unbelievably powerful. Thank God. It's like, if I had not done that, I'd have been carrying around that bag of garbage for 27 years like I wish I would have. And been miserable about it. But instead, Alcoholics Anonymous gave me a way out. I think it's step 10. You know, I have to keep looking at these things. I have to keep looking at like where I'm defective, right? It says love and tolerance. That's our code. Sometimes I'm very loving, and sometimes I'm very tolerant. Okay? Sometimes I'm just not. Right? Sometimes I'm very patient with other people, and sometimes I'm just a jerk. Sometimes, you know, I'm engaged now to this unbelievable woman. I have totally outkicked my coverage on this one, okay? Unbelievable. And she's crazy about me. She says I'm the most loving person she's ever met. I'm like, me? I'm like, you sure? Me? Now, sometimes I am. And that's not me. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That is working 12 steps and having a higher power that helps me act better than I feel like acting. It helps me think about you before I think about me, more times than not. But sometimes, you know, do I love? Or do I just keep score? You know, yeah, I'll make the dinner, and then I'll do the dishes, and I'll do the laundry, and I'll do this. And I'm just like, sometimes I do that without even a thought. And sometimes I'm over there in my head with my pen. Dishes, dinner, hey, have a little something for the effort, you know? And it's like, I'm not really doing that out of genuine love. It's like, I want something in return. Now, you say that's kind of a normal thing, but for alcoholics, we take that to the 10th power, you know? And it's just not healthy. What I've learned is, when I'm busy helping other people get what they want, I get what I want, okay? I have peace. I have peace from my head being so loud. So then I get to step 11, okay? It says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact. So it's like, in step 2, when it says lack of power is our dilemma, and I get to step 11 and it's still asking me, okay, I have to improve my conscious contact. Why? Improve. That means I have to get better at it. If I'm still praying the same way as I was like 35 years ago, I have totally missed the boat, right? I need to get better at it. It's like anything. I want to be a better golfer, I got to practice. I want to play my guitar better, I got to practice. Whatever. Right? If I want to get more spiritual, I got to find ways to do that. Right? What am I asking for? The power to carry it out. Still, I'm at step 11. Lack of power is still my dilemma. It's like knowing what to do doesn't always get it done. Knowing what to do just means when I don't do it, I'm going to torture myself. Right? And an old-timer once told me, look, I want you to read pages 86 to 88 every day and tell you to stop. And I read it every day for at least 10 years straight. Every day. There's like great stuff in there. There's like a roadmap of how to live my day. It starts on awakening. Not like after I check my first 27 voicemails and emails and like see what's on Facebook. It's like on awakening. Start my day. Let's get connected. I usually wake up and say, good morning, God. Thank you. Breathing air is a good thing today. Okay? One of my favorite 2 words in the entire big book. It says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated. I don't know about you, but like when I'm agitated, I don't really pause. I like react. And sometimes it's not like reaction, it's more like nuclear reaction. Okay? But reading those words every day for 10 years, now I pause, more times than not. I've had some great pauses in my sobriety. I remember I was living in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. Maybe you've heard of that thing, right? It was like 10 years ago now. Now, I am watching, literally, I was in Chicago that coincidentally, like the 3 or 4 days that it happened. I ended up staying in Chicago for a month because I couldn't get back there. Now, I am like literally watching all my stuff like float down the river. My ex-wife calls me. Hey, you know, your son, he got into a little bit of problem. I need you to send me $3,000. And I paused. And I thought, wait a minute. You know where I live, right? I mean, you know that, right? I mean, are you watching like the footage on TV? I mean, do you own a TV? I knew she had a TV. She got it in a divorce. So it was a good TV. Like, you should turn that thing on. Now, I didn't say any of that to her. In my head, that's the craziness that's going on. But because I paused, that's where God's grace comes in and says, no, you're not going to do that. I wrote her a check. Not because I'm like some good guy, you know, like, thank me for not stealing the basket tonight, okay? Same thing. It's like, Look, Alcoholics Anonymous is telling me I am not a victim. Now, they call Katrina people, they call us victims, right? I'm not a victim. It's like it happened. All I can tell you is, yeah, I lost all my stuff, okay? It means I'm not going to retire when I'm going to work longer, but you know what? I can work. I'm healthy. And I'm telling you another thing. Moving from New Orleans to D.C., very easy. 2 boxes in the car, go. Okay? Nothing to pack. So I get here, and I'm very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started the meeting tonight, my home group, I started it, And I get to sponsor a bunch of guys. It's like one of the greatest joys of Alcoholics Anonymous, Watching somebody else, watch the light come on. Watch them, see them go from, feeling like there's no hope to, watching their life start to transform before your very eyes. And knowing you have nothing to do with it. It means they've bought into this AA thing. And they've worked the steps, and you've helped them. There's nothing like that in the world. And I got a minute left. So, Raven, all I can tell you is, how'd you like to, after a period of time, not only not have to drink anymore, but you stay in Alcoholics Anonymous and stay sober, and you get to see who and what you really are. And when that happens, you actually like that person. How'd you like that to happen? That happens in Alcoholics Anonymous every day. So, jump in. Thanks.